Good evening everyone. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy's daily newspaper analysis. I'm Surya and today is 27 January 2026. And today we have some important topics from different newspapers. We'll be discussing all these topics one by one. The first topic is about US exit from International Solar Alliance, and then we'll talk about the government funded or public funded geriatric care, and we'll also understand UGC equity regulations 2026, and we'll also look into a prelims practice question based on the gallantry awards. Right, yesterday we have a prelims practice question, and this prelims practice question is talking about the Monroe Doctrine. Now if you look at the options here, so it was proclaimed by the United States in the early 19th century is correct statement. It opposed further European colonization in Americas. This is also correct. And it declared that United States would not interfere in the internal affairs of European countries. This is also a correct statement. The fourth statement, it led to the immediate withdrawal of European powers from the colonies in Latin America, is incorrect statement. So therefore the correct answer is 1, 2, 3. However, why this Monroe Doctrine is in news? The Monroe Doctrine is in news because recently Donald Trump and US security forces have captured Nicolás Maduro of Venezuela. Now in fact, this is called as Monroe Doctrine. This Monroe Doctrine is just an extension of US Monroe Doctrine. Now in this context, if you look at these two doctrines, what exactly is a Monroe Doctrine? Now in fact, it was framed in the year 1823. Now in fact, as per this Monroe Doctrine, there will be a US sphere of influence. The US sphere of influence would extend to most of the Western Hemisphere. And in fact, there will be no European interference in US. And at the same time, US will also not interfere in the internal affairs of European countries. And apart from that, there will be no new European colonies in America, and Europe must stay out of the Western Hemisphere as per the Monroe Doctrine. And US will also stay out of Europe. However, this is what is called as a Monroe Doctrine, but recent attacks on Venezuela and capture of Nicolás Maduro is just an extension of Monroe Doctrine, and this is what is called as Monroe Doctrine under US President Donald Trump. Now other important details with respect to Monroe Doctrine are actually given here. So you can also refer this as well to get a broader overview about this Monroe Doctrine. And today also we have a very important prelims practice question. This question is dealing with the gallantry awards which were given yesterday on the eve of Republic Day. Now understand that yesterday also we have discussed and understood about the gallantry awards. Now with reference to the gallantry awards, consider the following statements. So three statements have been given here. So the first statement says that these awards were given by the government of India to individuals who have made significant contributions in the various fields such as art, literature, science, public service and social work. And second statement says that these awards are announced twice a year. And third statement, the highest gallantry award is the Paramveer Chakra followed by Ashok Chakra in terms of the precedence. So answer this question in the comment section and we'll be giving you the correct answer with explanation in tomorrow's class. Right. So let's understand the topics one by one. The first most important topic is recent US exit from the International Solar Alliance and how it is going to affect the Solar Alliance, and at the same time India's participation or implications on India's solar energy generation. Now let's briefly understand the context of it. Now what exactly is this International Solar Alliance? International Solar Alliance is an international organization under the leadership of India. So we can say that the International Solar Alliance is the only international organization where India is a leader. And in this International Solar Alliance, there are more than 100 member countries currently part of it or currently members of it. Now, what is the objective of International Solar Alliance? Before understanding the objective, we'll understand when it was established. It was established in the year 2015 on the sidelines of the Paris Summit, or it is also known as Paris Agreement, or it is also known as COP21. Now, this International Solar Alliance jointly launched by India and France on the sidelines of COP21 or Paris Agreement. Now, what is the objective of International Solar Alliance? The objective of International Solar Alliance is to tap the potential of solar energy generation and generate solar energy within the countries which are located within the tropics, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, because these are the countries which have the highest potential of solar energy generation, right? However, earlier US under Joe Biden also became part of this International Solar Alliance. But as of now, on January 7, the United States announced that it has been withdrawing from 66 international organizations, where US found that these organizations are no longer beneficial to US national interest. So because of that reason, they are going to withdraw from these 66 international organizations, and one such international organization is International Solar Alliance. Right. Now, in this context, if we talk about the International Solar Alliance, its headquarters is located in India, and it is jointly led by India and France, because it is jointly established by both India and France. And also understand that this International Solar Alliance is also known as a multilateral initiative. What is the objective? The multilateral initiative established with the objective of solar energy adoption. With the objective of solar energy adoption, particularly among the developing countries, developing capacities, technology sharing, financing, best practices. These are the objectives of the International Solar Alliance. However, the decisions raised concerns globally. What decision? Particularly US withdrawal out of the International Solar Alliance and other organizations have raised a lot of concerns and even implications also for India as well. Right? So therefore, in this context, what will be the implications? What are the concerns for US exiting out of the International Solar Alliance? Let's understand this. Now, if we talk about briefly about this International Solar Alliance, it was established in the year 2015 jointly by both India and France. What is the objective of International Solar Alliance? The objective of International Solar Alliance ensuring energy security in developing countries by tapping the potential of solar energy generation. And at the same time, to make solar energy generation affordable, accessible, available, and even scalable in most of these countries, most priority will be given to the developing countries. Developing countries, particularly in the global south, right? However, the International Solar Alliance, it mostly focuses on certain areas. So what are the areas? For example, it talks about mobilizing sustainable scale of finance so that this finance can be given to almost all the countries to develop the solar energy generation capacities. And then there is a need to reduce the investment risks of the member countries, and this is one of the priority of International Solar Alliance. And then accelerating the solar energy adoption, and then capacity building and training. So these are the objectives with which the International Solar Alliance can be launched, or it is actually launched. Right. So as of now, how many countries are part of it? 120 member countries are part of the International Solar Alliance, and the 120 countries are from Asia, Africa, and even a small island developing states across the Indo-Pacific region. Right. So however, the US joined relatively late in the year 2021, and US has contributed $2.1 million, or roughly 1% of the total funding of this International Solar Alliance. Now, in this context, what will be the implications of US withdrawal out of the International Solar Alliance? We'll understand that. But apart from this, so we have some important details with respect to International Solar Alliance. It is a group of solar energy rich countries which are located between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Right. So as we have already discussed that India and France collaborate together to address climate change and other solar energy solutions. When it was launched in the year 2015 and it came into force in the year 2017. What is the vision? The vision is, let us join together to make sun brighter. And in fact, so we have the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030. So how many sustainable development goals are there? 17 sustainable development goals are there, and these 17 sustainable development goals aimed to be achieved by the year 2030. Right. However, the International Solar Alliance will play a very, very important role to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which talks about affordable energy. Right. So it is dealing with affordable energy, and goal number 13, it deals with the climate action. So therefore, it is expected that the International Solar Alliance will help achieve both target number 7, goal number 7 and goal number 13 as well. So how many countries are signatory so far? 120 countries are signatory of this International Solar Alliance, and 102 countries already fully ratified this International Solar Alliance. However, there is no restrictions. Those countries which are outside the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, they can also become part of the International Solar Alliance. They can join, but they lack the voting rights. And in fact, all United Nations members can become part of the International Solar Alliance. Now, the headquarters of the International Solar Alliance is located within India only, a place called Gurugram in Haryana. So which is National Institute for Solar Energy of India, Gurugram. Now, what is its mission? A mission is every home, no matter how far away, will have a light at a home, and this is the mission of International Solar Alliance. Now, the UN General Assembly granted observer status to International Solar Alliance in the year 2021. Now, in fact, the International Solar Alliance's Towards 1000 strategy. So this Towards 1000 strategy aims to mobilize 1000 billion US dollars in solar investments by 2030, provide clean energy for 1 billion individuals, and also install 1000 gigawatt of solar capacity. So these are the objectives of the International Solar Alliance. Now let's understand the impact of the US exit on the International Solar Alliance. So what impact we would likely face? Now, if we talk about the financial impact, it is generally believed that if US exits out of the International Solar Alliance, there will be a limited impact on India and the functioning of the International Solar Alliance. So because it has been clarified that the day-to-day operations will continue as before, there will be no effect, no impact of US exit on the International Solar Alliance first. Secondly, the ongoing programs will not be shut down. So these programs will also be carried out as they've carried out before, and training and capacity buildings will remain intact as well. So therefore, financially, there will be a very limited or very less impact on the functioning of International Solar Alliance. However, the confidence effect is more significant, right? Because the withdrawal of a major economy like US can actually have the confidence effect, right? For example, it increases the lender caution. So those organizations which are lending to the International Solar Alliance, they will be cautious because an economy like US has been withdrawn out of it, and then a delay in project approvals, and even it might weaken the multilateral climate momentum as well. For example, a country which is a large economy, which is a leader, which can actually play a very important role, if it withdraws out of the International Solar Alliance, of course it affects the climate momentum that has been taken up by the International Solar Alliance. However, understand that the International Solar Alliance, particularly focusing on the global south, poor underdeveloped countries and the island states, right? So therefore, it is particularly important and relevant for African and poor developing countries where International Solar Alliance supported solar projects, they rely heavily on international cooperation, and even concessional finance. Finance is also very important to taken up these projects on a large scale and achieve the objectives of International Solar Alliance. Now, what could be the likely implications for India's solar energy generation industry? Now, understand, if we talk about the implications of it, now the direct economic impact is minimal, because India does not depend on US for solar equipment import. So as of now, India has been importing most of its solar equipment from China. So therefore, we have not been importing most of the solar equipment from China, and because of that reason, the impact will be minimal on India. Secondly, the domestic manufacturing capacity in India is also strong. For example, more than 144 gigawatt modules and 25 gigawatt cells that India can actually produce, and imports largely come from China, not from US. However, solar tariffs, project costs, and even domestic investments, they remain unaffected by US withdrawal out of the International Solar Alliance. Now, what exactly is a solar tariff? Now, solar tariff actually means that per unit cost of solar energy that a company which has been producing solar energy, which sell every unit in the market, each unit is a solar tariff. Right, so this is different from the tariffs which are imposed on during trade. Solar tariff is the cost of every unit of solar energy generated. So therefore, mostly the solar tariffs, project costs, domestic investment, they remain unaffected by US withdrawal out of the International Solar Alliance, and even employment in manufacturing installations and operations are also largely secure. However, there might be an upside, as Indian manufacturers could find export opportunities if US reduces domestic renewable approvals but still needs a clean energy equipment as well. Right, so this is how a US withdrawal from International Solar Alliance is going to have a very minimal effect on the functioning of International Solar Alliance, and at the same time on India and its solar energy generation potential as well. Right, so the next important topic. So India needs a public funded geriatric care. Now we'll understand what exactly is a geriatric care and why there is a need for public funded geriatric care and why India should focus on this geriatric care. So we're going to understand this in detail. So let's understand the geriatric care in India. Now what exactly is a geriatric care? So geriatric care is a care economy which particularly deals with the health and other needs of elderly population. Now understand that India is a country with a large population in the world, and India is also a country with a large young workforce or young population. But over a period of time, this young population will turn elderly or older population. Right. So older population should not be a burden to India's economy. Right, so therefore it is very, very important that this geriatric care should be taken adequate focus, or it should be given adequate focus. Now anyway, we'll understand geriatric care in detail, but understand first that India is often viewed through the lens of the demographic dividend. Now what exactly is a demographic dividend? The largest number of workforce in young population, largest number of workforce or largest number of population who are young. So this is what is called as demographic dividend. Now India is also a country with a large demographic dividend. However, this national average of large demographic dividend that we have in India, it actually masks the sharp interstate demographic contrast. Now, what is the meaning of this sharp interstate demographic contrast? For example, states like UP, Bihar with large population, there is no doubt that large population is young. But what about states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh? So these states, the population growth has slowed down in these states, and most of these states have older population. But on the other hand, if you look at states like UP and Bihar, most of its people are young people, and states in southern part of India, most of the people are going to be old people. So this is what is considered as sharp interstate demographic contrasts which are existing. However, according to the Reserve Bank of India's report, states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu, so they are become aging states by the year 2036, or they also became aged economies by 2036, with elderly populations exceeding 22% or 20% respectively. And this is going to be a burden on these economies or these states, right? Now understand that since the elderly population has been increasing rapidly in most of the southern states, the geriatric care is an important area that states need to focus on. The geriatric care particularly focuses on the care, health, security, a dignity of life of elderly population. It mostly focuses on elderly population, and their dignified life is what is called as geriatric care. So this geriatric care includes the health care of elderly, the income security of elderly, for example, pensions. And at the same time, if you look at elderly population, they might also have health complications at an elderly age. So therefore, health insurance, health coverage, income security, social support for the elderly, everything comes under this geriatric care, right? So therefore, if we talk about the status of aging and geriatric care in India, now understand that India's elderly population, those who are more than 60 years of age, they stood at about 10.1% of total India's population in the year 2021. And this is going to be the concern. Why? Because by 2030, this number is going to increase. And by 2040, 2050, this elderly population number is going to increase a lot. According to some estimates, by 2050, the elderly population could reach 20% of India's total population, and this is a concern for a country like India. Now understand, there is a disparity between the southern states and the northern state, how the aging has been taking place. For example, the southern states, they face advanced aging due to low fertility rate, or even they have a high life expectancy. For example, imagine elderly population have a higher life expectancy rate, then there might be more elderly population, and low fertility rate means that the existing population, if they go older, and then the old age population will also increase. So therefore, the southern states will have more elderly population than the northern states. But on the other hand, northern states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, they still remain youthful, right? But they will eventually age and risking aging before getting rich. Now understand that it is generally suggested that a state or a nation must be rich, must be developed before its population, most of its population become older, so that the country will support the older population or elderly population, right? Now in this context, it is important to develop the geriatric care, particularly investing in public geriatric care is the need of the hour. Public geriatric care is the need of the hour. However, as of now, the infrastructure is very limited, because the public health systems, they remain focused on maternal and child health. They are less focused on this geriatric care. However, while specialized geriatric wards, long-term care facilities, and even community care services are actually inadequate in a country like India. You take any state. So in most of the states, the facilities to provide geriatric care are poor and inadequate. So this has to change, keeping in mind in future the elderly population might increase in India, particularly in southern states, in very near future. And some important and interesting data about elderly population and aging in India has also been given here. And this data will substantiate whatever we have discussed with respect to aging population. Now understand that by 2040 or 2050, the aging in India or population who are elderly, it will increase substantially. So therefore, it is very important that the government must provide social security, social safety, pensions, health insurance. So all these facilities for the elderly population. Now, apart from that, if we talk about the gendered nature of aging. Now, aging disproportionately affects women. So that means because as of now, the life expectancy of women is also more in India compared to men. Women live longer but often lack formal employment history, they lack pensions, they lack social security, income support, care. So that is where a woman would be more vulnerable than men, first thing. And secondly, the studies have also been indicating that majority of elderly women, they depend on family or meager social pensions which are very often not adequate. However, the government has launched schemes like Indira Gandhi National Old Age Pension Scheme, which hardly provide pension of 200 to 500 rupees per month, which is not adequate and not sufficient to live a decent and a dignified life by an elderly woman or a man. So therefore, there is a need to increase this pension amount by the government. However, it is good to hear that some states in the southern part of India, they even providing a pension of 4,000 rupees and 5,000 rupees for an elderly man or a woman. So it will help them to live a decent and a dignified life. So therefore, if you give 200, 500 pensions for a family or for a man or a woman who are in their old age, it highlights the fragility of income security for elderly women. So women are mostly vulnerable in their old or elderly age. So however, now the details about this geriatric care have been also mentioned here. Right? So geriatric care will involve a comprehensive medical management, particularly focusing on elderly men and elderly women. Particularly focusing on diseases, heart diseases, arthritis, diabetes, cognitive decline, and then multidisciplinary approach involving all stakeholders, involving center, state, interdepartmental coordination, which is very important. Coordination with the private sector is also very important. And then functional and cognitive support must be provided. And then medication management and holistic care. So all these are important and essential elements of geriatric care, right? So what steps need to be taken? Social security is very important. So therefore, there should be health insurance for the elderly people. And then there should be a need to increase pension amount for the elderly population. So pension amount need to be increased. Health insurance need to be provided. Under Ayushman Bharat, the health insurance is even extended to the elderly population, and this is a step which is necessary and needed in a country like India. And apart from that, the focus should be on investments in care economy is needed, particularly focusing on geriatric care. And then public funded geriatric care is the need of the hour. So all these measures have to be taken in India to make geriatric care holistic care, right? So I hope you have understood this, and let's talk about the erosion of traditional support systems with respect to the geriatric care, because Reserve Bank of India's assumptions of family-based support are increasingly unrealistic as of now. For example, migration, urbanization, and nuclear families. Nuclear families are small families. So, nuclear families, urbanization, migration weakened the informal care networks. And even elderly persons, especially those people who are living in rural areas, they face social isolation and unmet care needs as well. So therefore, in this context, without providing alternatives like insurance, income support, pensions, Many elderly are pushed into the financial dependency and neglect, so they may not live a dignified life during the old age. However, there are certain policy gaps as well, and the policy gaps may create certain risks as well. For example, the fiscal consolidation pressures on the states, on the government, so they can actually limit the ability of the states to expand social pensions and health care. Secondly, Reserve Bank of India's focus on nationalizing subsidies risk under investment in geriatric welfare. Right, so Reserve Bank of India is actually focusing on rationalizing subsidies. So what exactly is rationalization of subsidies? Rationalization of subsidies in the sense that Reserve Bank of India is requesting or recommending the governments to reduce the subsidies given to the people through various welfare programs. And if the government is withdrawing subsidies to the various welfare programs, it may even threaten investments in the geriatric care as well. And apart from that, the automation, artificial intelligence, they might reduce the labor intensive job creation. If labor intensive job creation, labor intensive industries are not there, it might shrink the tax base needed to fund the elderly care. For example, if there are no industries which are labor intensive industries, there will be no employment, no social security, no social safety for the people. Secondly, it might also reduces taxes for the government. Reducing tax base for the government, then government will have a limited resources to finance the geriatric care. So therefore, there are several policy gaps, and these policy gaps must be bridged to provide quality, affordable geriatric care for the elderly population, keeping in mind the growing elderly population in India. The next important topic is new UGC equity regulations, and it is recently a cause of concern. There are protests against this new UGC equity regulations. So let's briefly understand what exactly is this new UGC equity regulations. Now, recently the University Grants Commission. So University Grants Commission has notified UGC Promotion of Equity in Higher Educational Institutions regulations of 2026. So these regulations were framed by UCC and released by UCC. Now, what is the objective of these regulations 2026? They aimed at tackling caste-based discrimination in higher educational institutions. So the objective of these regulations is to prevent and prohibit caste-based discrimination against the lower sections of the or lower castes of the society, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. So let's understand some of the key provisions of UGC Promotion of Equity in Higher Educational Institutions regulations. Now understand that it actually covers the broad coverage of caste-based discrimination, particularly those students who belong to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. So against the backward classes, any caste-based discrimination or any unfair or biased treatment will be treated severely and strictly. So therefore, it is generally believed that this is primarily, issued by the University Grants Commission against the general category, right? So general category, why? Because so it has been this regulations actually defining caste-based discrimination against SCs and STs and OBCs who are remaining general category. It is generally believed that general category candidates or students, they do caste discrimination in the universities. So therefore, this could be the one reason. Second reason is expanded definition of discrimination against SC, STs and other backward classes, because the discrimination is defined as unfair, biased and a differential treatment, whether it could be explicit or implicit, on the grounds like caste, religion, race, gender, place of birth and disability. So therefore, there is a wider definition of what constitutes the discrimination. And then mandatory equality opportunity centers or equal opportunity centers. So every higher educational institution, it is required to establish equal opportunity center. So this equal opportunity center's objective is to promote equity, social inclusion and equal access, and also aimed to address issues like discrimination on campus. So that is the objective with which the equality or equal opportunity centers are established. And each institution must also form an equity committee under the Equal Opportunity Center. And this equity committee will be chaired by the head of the institution, and it will also have the mandatory participation from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, OBCs, persons with disabilities and women. So therefore it is expected that there will be inclusive participation in the or inclusive representation in the equity committee. And even the regulations will also place a clear duty on institutions to eradicate discrimination and also promote equity, with the head of the institution made directly responsible for effective implementation of the compliance. So therefore, these provisions primarily target those people or those students who are discriminated in the higher educational institutions. It covers scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes. The stringent punishments will be there if anybody is discriminating other students on the basis of gender, caste, race, religion, place of birth and disability. So this is what the UGC guidelines or anti-discrimination rules of 2026 in higher educational institutions. So that's all for today, and thank you so much.